All right, guys, let's get this on the roll. So we're going to get this started. Type in the chat if you can hear me or not. We are going to get this going, and it seems like the stream is live. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the On Point podcast. Today, we are starting a new series called Trump v. Harris. This is essentially what we do all the time on the podcast, but I'm kind of doing something a little bit different now. I'm going to try to make this a little bit more of a voter-based interactive sort of show. And so starting effectively, probably the next episode, we'll have people on. I'm getting people to sign up and whatnot to be on the show. And as of right now, we are probably not going to have any guests tonight, but we do have a lot of people signed up, which is a good thing. And it's a little bit of a different format for the show because I do want this to be a little bit more professional. I do want it to be more engaging, and I want people to be able to, watch long term, even after the election ends, because I want to be able to continue this after the election. So, guys, if you are in here, I see there's about 74 of you guys. Make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe. I got a lot of content for you guys. We got a lot to cover today. We got a lot to go over. You'll see it on the bottom. We got Alan Lichtman's 13 Keys, new Rich Barrett's national poll, new CNN battlegrounds, and my on-point national average and election model. So we got a lot to go over today. We have a lot of stuff to look at. And the first thing we're going to look at is the 13 Keys. And we will see that Alan Lichtman, he's reportedly going to drop his poll. He's going to drop his announcement pretty soon. He's supposed to drop his prediction. Now, for those of you who don't know who Alan Lichtman is, Alan Lichtman is a professor, I believe from, I wonder what university he taught at, but I believe he is a university professor. And he collaborated with a Russian sort of data scientist, and they created a sort of model called the 13 Keys. And the 13 Keys are a sort of stability model to predict whether the incumbent party gets ousted out of the White House or not. And this kind of model has retrospectively been correct since 1980, but when you apply the keys going back, it technically gets every election right going back to 1860, which is pretty interesting. I'm not sure about that, but I do believe that is the case. And he is supposed to drop his election prediction pretty soon. And so looking back on the keys, I mean, they've been accurate, but there is a problem. In 2000, he predicted Al Gore to be the winner of the presidential election. Back then, it was a popular vote predictor, right? This is where it gets a little messy. It was supposed to predict the popular vote. And then when Bush won, he was like, oh, no, either they stole it or, actually, my thing was supposed to predict the popular vote, not the electoral college. And so he changed it to be an electoral college predictor. But then in 2016, he had Trump up, and he stated multiple times that Trump was going to win the popular vote. So everyone was like, okay, I guess he has Trump up because Trump's supposed to win the popular vote. But then Trump didn't win the popular vote. So it's like either he was wrong in 2016 or he was wrong in 2000. He can't be right in either election. So technically, he hasn't had 100% accuracy. And even in his most recent podcast with his son, he's talked about the keys not being definitive and how the two-party system could be eliminated and how that could really disrupt the entire process. It could also be certain things change so drastically that the keys may not be useful. And so he stated before that the keys are not definitive. And this is a problem for Alan Lichtman because right now, look, I understand the professor has been right. And the keys are decent. They're pretty decent if you use them correctly. The problem is he objectively has not been using the keys correctly. And this is the main problem that everybody has right now. He has not been using the keys objectively. And today we're going to go ahead and look right now. We're going to share on my screen. If you guys could see what I'm looking at here, we are looking at the 13 keys tracker, and pretty much right now, a lot of these keys, depending on the analyses, have been kind of tilting a certain way. And so right now, based out of my analysis, I mean, midterm games after the midterm elections, the incumbent party holds more seats in the U.S. House of Representatives than the previous midterm. The Republicans gained, so that would be certainly false. So the way this works is that if there are 6 or more false keys, then Donald Trump wins. If there are 8 or more keys that are true, then Kamala Harris wins. That's how this kind of goes. No primary contest. This is the funny part. Allen has this true, but this is where the dishonesty kind of gets a little weird. Kamala Harris didn't even have a legitimate primary contest. It's just the truth. Didn't have a legitimate primary contest. She had a coronation, not a nomination. They kicked out Biden because he was not going to be able to win that race, and they kicked him out of convenience, and the delegates picked Harris, not the people. And you could even argue that Biden really rigged his own primary in some ways by not letting RFK into some states and changing the order of the primaries. And so that was also really ineffective as well for, Joe Biden. And so you could even argue that no primary contest is false. It's just objectively true because they basically installed the candidate. And at that point, that basically negates the primary key. Incumbent seeking re-election, that's false. No third party is technically true now because there's not going to be a candidate to get over 5%, really. But you have the problem with RFK endorsing Donald Trump. And so technically, some of those third-party candidates are still there. Those third-party voters are still there, but they're voting for Donald Trump. So this one's a little bit subjective, but for the sake of the keys, I'm going to put them true. Short-term economy and strong long-term economy. Here's the problem with these. He goes off of the GDP, and the GDP is based on job growth and many metrics that we look at, but here's the problem. They just revised down like 815,000 jobs. Like, to be honest, that's not good because it's like the GDP may not even be a useful metric to even go off of. And in 1992, he actually used polling data to influence the keys for the economy because, a majority of Americans perceive the economy to not be well. But the issue with that is now that you have polling data where voters they're not satisfied with the economy, but he won't use the polling data now. So it's like, that's kind of weird. Looking at, these, I would put both of those false. I mean, I would put both of those false. That already puts Donald Trump at 5 false keys. So he's almost winning just me doing the keys. Major policy change, you could technically put this true, except it's not really supposed to benefit the incumbent because and the way I would kind of do this is looking at looking at the kind of trajectory that the keys were on in a way. That was also really a big issue too. If you look at, for example, like the right direction of the nation, wrong track, right track meter, it was looking better at the beginning of Biden's term than it is now. So objectively, whatever policy change was made really should be hurting the incumbent party. No social unrest. I mean, we had a former president almost be assassinated. The Israel-Hamas protester going on. We have a school shooting epidemic. We just had a new shooting in Atlanta today. There's so much stuff going on in the country that I almost feel like this should always be false. And Trump is already winning by me doing the keys. No scandal. This one's sort of subjective too, because technically Biden hasn't had an impeachment or anything filed. Again, this is me trying to do these as humanly unbiased as possible. Technically, the Hunter Biden stuff does not stick to Biden because it has to pertain to the incumbent president himself. However, you could technically say that the media covering up for Biden's mental unwellness during the presidency is a scandal for Biden. And the fact that Biden hid that from the public. So there's a kind of a wiggle room to play around with it. I may leave it undecided because it's really objective, but the media did cover up his mental wellness. And this is a point that Trump is really going to hammer Harrison in the debate. It's going to be a big problem. Looking at no military foreign failure, I mean, that's certainly false. And major foreign military success, that's false. I mean, you had the Afghanistan pullout, which objectively he said wasn't even a problem. It wasn't a failure, really? So 13 American soldiers dying and a botched operation of leaving millions of dollars worth of equipment for the Taliban to use is not a failure? Really? And they haven't came to any peace deals in Israel, Hamas, or Ukraine and Russia. So there is military failure, and there is no military success. The foreign policy has actually been one of the worst aspects of the administration. And looking at charismatic incumbent, I mean, Biden is not even running, but he's got no income and he's got no charisma. And an uncharismatic challenger, this one is interesting because technically Obama in 2008 and Reagan were the only ones to have gotten this. And it's basically his benchmark is they need to be polling. I think it's above 60%. So just to give this one to Allen, I would say, okay, yeah. If you're going to use 60% as a benchmark, that's pretty straightforward. Donald Trump does have charismatic, traits, but is he really a charismatic challenger? According to the definition, not necessarily. Even if you were to get rid of no primary contest, no social unrest, even if you got rid of those keys, and even if you uncheck the strong short-term economy keys, some of those more subjective ones, Donald Trump still is winning. He still wins. And even if you were to uncheck the strong long-term economy key, all these keys that I have filled in right now, these are what Allen has them at. That's where Allen has them at. There are 5 keys that you could kind of play around with. The problem is Allen has all of these true. He has all of these true and has Harris winning. His prediction will more than likely have Harris winning. I'm here to tell you, don't use Twitter that day. Don't pay attention to what he's got to say. If a forecaster changes their prediction because of what Allen has, don't take them as legitimate. It is going to be a propaganda tool to be used against everybody to convince everybody that Trump can win the election. It's going to become a problem, and they're going to use it to demoralize people. This year, he is not being an honest actor. He's being a bad faith actor this year. They have been promoting him ever since Biden's failed debate performance, only because Biden did so bad that they had to bring around the only cope that they basically could have had. It's not a surprise. And so looking at this, it is really bad for Harris because even with the keys filled in, Trump is already at 5 false keys. I mean, 1 key goes red, which could be no social unrest, and Trump's the winner. And that's the one that more than likely Allen would probably have go. I think Allen's probably going to put true for everything else. So more than likely, he's going to have no primary contest. He's going to put strong and short term. He's going to put these true. He's blindsided. He's using the GDP, even though technically that's not the right thing to do. And no scandal hills, he's going to put it true. So, and even these, he's a little bit iffy on these, but I think he may put these false. And so really the whole thing hinges on no social unrest. And he has kind of gone back and forth on this one. So the entire key set basically depends on key 8, which is no social unrest. And he said, oh, we're going to wait till the DNC to see if there's protest. And there was. Literally, the crowd outside in the beginning of the day for the protest was bigger than the crowd inside the DNC. And I don't know if he's going to use that as a metric or not, but it's very clear to me that, I mean, even objectively in general, there is social unrest in this country. There is. Like, it's just it's basically almost universally agreed upon. I mean, 75% of Americans think we're headed in the wrong direction. So it's like, you can't really put no social unrest. It's almost kind of dishonest to not put that. So even using the keys his way, the only one that could really go either way based on his categorizations is no social unrest. So Donald Trump could technically still win in his keys coming up pretty soon. And he's kind of been throwing around these ad hominem attacks to Donald Trump in a way, like he's been throwing stuff around now. And the reason why he's doing that is because I have a feeling he's not 100% certain about his keys. I think that may be it. And if we go to his Twitter feed, we'll see very quickly that he is kind of in a bad spot right now when it comes to looking at some of this stuff. I mean, right now, he was completely just freaking out on Twitter. I wonder if he still has it up. I do not think he has it up. Or I don't know who posted it. I think it's on Rich's account. Let me go to Rich Barris and see if he has the Alan Lichtman post up still. Here it is.
I can't say whether you say.
So Alan Lichtman said, and keep in mind, he hasn't even made his prediction yet. Alan Lichtman, if Trump wins, take him seriously. He's going to put his policies that he promised into effect. He has nothing to lose. He's immune. Democrats can't do anything to him. And it's so funny, but it's like, this is the most biased he's ever been in the lead up to a prediction. This is the most biased he's ever been in the lead up to a prediction. And so it's like, really? Like, is he really going to be a decently faithful actor this year? Probably not. They've been promoting him quite a bit ever since the debate with Biden. That's when he started popping out of nowhere. That's when he started popping up again. And so it's like, I don't know. It's a little fishy. I mean, we'll see what happens when he drops his prediction. I'd advise you either way, even if he has Trump winning, not to take it literally, because if he does have Trump winning, he would have been the luckiest man ever. And that literally would only be because he decides to put the no social unrest key false. So I almost kind of hope he picks Harris just for him to ruin his track record. And I'm going to get to that because we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. But that's kind of it for the Alan Lichtman section of the show. We're going to get to the comments in the live chat. I'm going to kind of go through chat a bit. Trevor Miller, West Virginia here, looking at what's up with the, Jeffrey, Kansas here, Ryan Roman, California, John Featherland, hit the like button, everyone. Columbus, Ohio, Minnesota, Texas. I don't know who this is. Rainbow Dash. I don't know who that is. Steve Dow. Lichtman has TDSD. I mean, yeah, it's very possible. Hot take: there will be no Gaza ceasefire by election day. I think that's going to be true, purely because Newt knows that the Gaza war hurts Harris, and it's politically beneficial for him to have Trump in the White House. I mean, you could make a strong case for that. What happens if there are 5 keys against her? I mean, she wouldn't lose if there are 5 keys. He needs to have 6 in order to fall down. Insanity to support. Official Trump fan page says, "What's up?" Alan Lichtman is so biased, truly a legend in his own mind. Trump will be elected 47th president, despite Alan's predictions rooted on keys. Open no doors of objectivity. Okay, that was a good one. Comrade Kamala, presidential chances are so cooked when her vice president's family endorsed Trump. Yeah, that is another thing that happened. That is another thing that happened today. The Walz family posted up from Nebraska, his brother, I guess, and a bunch of other people. They posted up with shirts, and it said Walz Trump or walls for Trump or something like that. I thought that was hilarious. That was a really funny picture. I hope that he goes on stage. I mean, it would be kind of hilarious to see something like that. I think that would be pretty funny if like Jeff, because that's his brother's name, Jeff Walls. It would be kind of funny if Jeff went on stage. It would be kind of nuts if that happened, to be honest, because there would just be so much going on. Like that would actually be insane. What is our next topic here? Okay, Richard Barris, new national poll. Yes, we have the new national poll from a person that is very, very accurate in their national data. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, their stuff has been pretty accurate over the past few years. And right now, they're in a good spot. I mean, they are in a good spot right now when it comes to predicting the elections. I mean, they got it spot on back in the previous election. And it seems like they have not posted it to their website yet. But I did watch the live stream with Richard Barris, and I'm going to commentate it over briefly. Right now, he has the race tied. Like, it's literally 50-50. It was like, I think a sample of like probably roughly like 2,400 respondents, which is a decent size. And it's literally like tied. Like Trump gets one more vote than Harris does. It's like really neck and neck. And what's awesome is the Kennedy endorsements seem to really help Trump. Based on his analysis, he thinks that without the Kennedy endorsement, it would have been like a Harris plus 2.5 plus 2 national environment, which would have been really crazy. All New Year 2024 for 2 says, will you do a county map for your model? I don't know about that. I may have a team do that at some point. I'm not really sure if I'm going to go ahead and do that. I may stick to the because in the future, once I'm able to get more resources, and if I'm right this year, I'm going to use that to really help me get up the ranks in the field. And for 2028 and the midterms, we're going to put together way more complex models than anybody's ever done. My plan in the future, especially for 2028, is to sponsor polls that literally poll by county, which I believe is going to be the best way to do it. Because if you can get about 300 respondents from every county and you just add it up, you're going to get something that probably is way more accurate than targeting the statewide. Because when you target statewide and you do a sample of 500, you may not reach certain voters. But if you literally do every county, it's very possible that you get a little bit more of an accurate representation. Now, that would cost a lot of money to do. Like, it would be pretty expensive. But that would be later on in 2028, and maybe even during the midterms, I might even try to put something together like that and see if that is possible. It would definitely have to be a multi-team effort to do that. I probably would ask Mark from Rasmussen, and possibly if I get in touch with Richard Barris at some point, that may be something that I would like to sponsor in the future. I think it would be a pretty decent thing to do, because if you at least again, and it wouldn't be polls that drop very frequently, like this would be polling that would be done like a month before the election. Like, it would be something that's done a month before to really like have it close so that it's data that's usable, and not like, oh, it was 5 months ago, you know, we can't use it. It would be stuff that would be done like really close to the election. But just my idea is that if you poll every county and add it up, and then you go through the polling process and you weigh all the data and you kind of have your target electorates and whatnot, you get a little bit more of a representative sample that's better for you to look at. And so that's why I think that that would be more effective. But again, it would cost a lot of money. But Richard Barris, they have it tied, right? The poll's tied. Trump is trailing with Asians by 5 points. That's close. Hispanics, he's down like 15. nationally. I think I have him losing by 5 nationally. I did replace the demographic model today with Richard Barris's crosstabs because his actually tend to be some of the more accurate crosstabs nationally. So I did actually replace my demographic model with his crosstabs, and I'm actually going to share my screen and we'll kind of go over what his crosstabs mean. So with the leaners included, so this is with voters that he pushed in either direction. I'll actually put my screen like this so you guys could see it a little better. What happens is if you actually go ahead and you show, like, let's say, I think when he pushed for leaners, it was Trump plus 15 with white. So that already puts Trump ahead in the Electoral College. That already puts him up in the election. He's already up. Then with Hispanics, it was like a 15-point lead for Harris nationally. Others, Trump was up by 15 when you average them out. Black voters, Harris was like at 77% and Trump was like at 22, which is a pretty high amount. I mean, even if Trump gets on the lower end of that, that's still like, even if he gets like in the mid-teens, that would still be pretty good, to be honest. That would be pretty good. And so if he is polling behind by 55% with black voters, and Asians are only a 5-point lead, you get Donald Trump winning the election with 318 electoral college votes to Harris's 220, and Trump is up in the popular vote by roughly about 4 points. And maybe it was plus 14 with leaners, but even when you do that, Trump is still up 318 electoral college votes. And out of all the blue states in my model, I think New Mexico is actually the closest one. So this kind of lines up with what I had my model right now. And so that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of the Rich Barris crosstabs. And he does have an electoral college victory for Donald Trump. I mean, he does. And he even talked about in the video when he kind of went over the analysis of his poll, when he broke it down by region, Donald Trump was up in the Rust Belt by 4 with leaners, and he was tied in it in 2020. So if he's winning the Rust Belt by 4, I mean, it's game over. And his national polling was some of the most accurate you could have gotten in 2016 and 2020. And his final spread was like Biden plus 4.1 in his last poll. So he pretty much got it spot on. I mean, he underestimated Biden by 0.4%, but that's a lot better than other national pollsters. And again, if the race is tied, it's a Donald Trump victory in the Electoral College. It is. It is. Even though Texas and Florida are going to move to the right, and New York and California are going to move to the right as well, kind of removing some of that Electoral College bias. If he is tied in the popular vote, he is winning the Electoral College. That's just how it works. So anything that's Trump plus anything, he's winning the Electoral College. And so that's what I have to say about the Rich Barris stuff. That's it for that section. Now, we do have new CNN battleground polling from the states. This is what we have. We do have these right now. And so if we go to interactivepolls.com, we're going to look these up because I'm sure Interactive Polls does have these up right now. So let's see where we have them. Oh my God, they dropped the Trump plus 16 poll from Oklahoma, and it's a Sooner poll with 323 likely voters. It has a D rating. Bro, oh my God. Like, how are they gonna give Rich Barris a C rating? He's literally been one of the most accurate national pollsters in the entire country. How does he have a C rating? How? Bro, this is so annoying, man. How is this even possible? Like, literally, how? Oh, man. That's so sad. Like, how do they give him a C rating? That is crazy, man. That's so ridiculous. Governor Paul Washington, Don't even fall for this, guys. The polls in Washington, Oregon for the governor and Senate races, they're always closer than usual, and then it ends up being a blowout. So don't even pay attention. Let's go ahead and see where these CNN polls are. Okay, here it is. So if we go ahead and look at the CNN polls, we do have some new battleground polling from CNN. And looking at it right now, it has Harris up 6 in Wisconsin. Pennsylvania is a tie. Nevada +1. Michigan, Harris +5. Georgia, Harris +1. And then Arizona is Trump +5. I don't know how in the world they managed to get this. I don't know how they got this set of state polling because it's ridiculous. There's no way Trump is winning Arizona by 5 and not winning Nevada. Like, it's not going to happen. The demographics with Hispanics are too correlated in Nevada and Arizona for that to be the case. It is too, and Nevada's been moving to the right nationally, and Arizona's been moving to the left. So if the result's even close to that, Nevada would have to be going red. Like, it just would because of the way the demographics work. But even looking up, let's look up their 2020 margins because I'm curious to see what they had in September. I'm very, very curious to see what CNN had at this point in the States. So we do have some polls. Let's go ahead and look at 2020 in September because I feel like that would be a little bit more appropriate. Okay, so in the state of Wisconsin, in North Carolina, September 9th to the 13th, right now they had Harris up by 5, or they had Biden up 3 with likely voters. So, and Trump won the state by 1. Just FYI. And they didn't poll North Carolina. Wisconsin, Biden +10. Trump 42%. He didn't get 42%. He got like 48%. Biden did get 52%. He got like 48. So it's like, really? Like, how are they ranked to B? How are they ranked to B when they're off in Wisconsin by 10? It's ridiculous. And Harris is only up by 6. And imagine, in September, they had Biden up 10. And the state was tied. And now, with Wisconsin, it's Harris +6. So it's like, even based off of that logic, and you've had the same polling error twice in Wisconsin in 2016 and 2020, it's like, really? And for all-star politics, bro, do you realize that 2020 and 2024 are completely different years? Well, you could have said the same thing for 2016 and 2020, and what do you know? We had the same polling error because Democrats were oversampled in polling data. They overstated white liberal college-educated voters, the same voters that are now in the response bias in the polling data right now, and all of the samples are being skewed to the left. Wisconsin is not going to be a D+ electorate anything. It was R+5 in 2020. It's not going to be a D+ anything in 2024. So if Wisconsin has a D+3 or even D+2 weighted electorate, it's going to be wrong. It's going to be wrong because the electorate went from D+1 to R+5 from 2016 to 2020. So if they're weighing for a D+2 to 3 electorate right now, even though the state's probably going to get redder in its electorate, they're going to get the state wrong. I actually expect the polling data to possibly be, the polling error may even be worse than before because of that. It may even be worse. And I'm not even weighing in my state average. I'm not even weighing for a super more redder electorate. I think I'm weighing for an electorate that's like 1 point redder than 2020, and Trump's up in my average by 6.4% when you reweigh all the polling data. Maybe there's a little bit of room for error, but even still, Trump's outside of the margin of error for sure. So, and then looking at Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, it's so funny because All-Star wants to claim that, the elections are not going to be the same. So you're telling me that Pennsylvania is going to vote to the right of Wisconsin by 6%? Even you don't believe that. There's no way. Nevada, D+1, but Wisconsin +6? So Nevada's going to vote to the left of Pennsylvania? Really? In Michigan, Harris +5. So Wisconsin's going to vote to the left of Michigan? Really? Like, these trends don't make sense. And Georgia, the samples this year, and I know this because I actually went through all the samples. Their samples in 2020 were actually overstating the electorate. That's why they oversampled Trump in 2020. Now all the samples are tied, or even Democrat leaning in Georgia. So they may actually underestimate Trump by a few points in Georgia because now all their polling is skewed to the left in their weighted electorates. And the electorate in Georgia is not going to be D plus anything. It's probably going to be R+3 to R+5. So even if they're weighing for a tied electorate or D+1, they're still going to get it wrong. And they're oversampling African-American voters by quite a bit. A lot of older women that are turning out in the polling data to vote for Harris. They're overstating white college-educated liberals as well in the polling data by a pretty extensive amount. And so I think they're going to underestimate Trump in Georgia too. Now, Arizona, there's a possibility that the polling error in Arizona, it's kind of weird because the electorate there last year was R+9. I'm actually cutting down the electorate in Arizona because I think the electorate's going to be closer there, probably by 2 to 3 points. And even when I do that, he's still up in the average by like 6. So even when I cut down the lead in the electorate for Trump by like half, Trump's still up in Arizona by 5 to 6 points because of how Democrat the samples are this year in Arizona. It's also the same thing. So it's like, really? Come on. Come on. It doesn't make any sense. Like, do we really believe that Trump's going to get 44% in Wisconsin? No, he's not. Do we think he's going to get 43 in Michigan? No. Is he getting 47 in Georgia? No. He's never gotten below 49% in Georgia ever. He's getting 49% in Arizona may actually be more likely. Do I think Harris is going to get 44? Probably not. Like, that seems a little too low. But again, I just wanted to bring these to your guys' attention because these are deeply flawed. Follow me on these because I'm weighing all of the data by their party ID to what I think the electorate's going to be. So this is a little bit of an experiment to see how accurate of an electorate I can get to and how accurately I can aggregate the polls. So if my averages are closer to the real results, nobody should be looking at 538 or RCP anymore. Everybody should be looking at me instead. I mean, it's just the truth. If I get it more right than they do, they should be paying attention to my state averages instead. So I just wanted to bring these to your guys' attention. These are deeply flawed. Even looking at previous polling errors. I mean, like, what is this? Pennsylvania, D+5 Biden, and he won it by 1? Like, what is this? And what is he up by? They're tied. So that's like Trump +4, Trump +3 when you apply the polling error. Wisconsin, Biden +10, like I stated already. And if you apply the polling error, it's like Trump +3 to 4. So kind of like Pennsylvania, and they kind of voted together-ish. Florida, Biden +2. Are you kidding me? What is this? Wisconsin, October 23rd, Biden +7. And it was tied. So if you apply the +7 here, Trump is still up. He's still up. And their samples in Wisconsin are more Democrat than 2020, by the way. Like, they're oversampling bad. Look at this. Michigan 2020, Biden +14. Like, what is this? They have the worst track record in the world. What is this? And look, Harris is up by 5. And it was +14. And Biden won the state by 3. Arizona, D+3. It was still off by 3 points. And if you apply that, Trump would actually be up by 8 in Arizona, which is a little too much. And looking at North Carolina, Biden +6. Are you serious? Trump won it by 1. That's like a 7-point polling error. That's abysmal. That is absolutely abysmal. So they don't have a great track record. I just wanted to show them because I wanted to compare the polling data from 2020 to 2024 to show you guys that Trump is polling better, even with CNN. And by the way, for everybody that says Rasmussen is a far left pollster, they just polled the battleground states and they got results that were like somewhat similar to this. Like, I think Harris was up in Michigan. Pennsylvania, I think Harris was like, I think maybe Trump was up by 1. Wisconsin was tied, I think, or Harris was up by a few. Like, it's not that different. Like, Rasmussen, their state polling that they just dropped, including the Senate candidates, are not that different from these, by the way, just to let you know. So everybody that wants to, oh, they're such a far-right pollster. No, they're not. They literally get the states slightly less wrong than the mainstream pollsters, and their national averages tend to be more accurate when you go back a month, which is how you should grade all the pollsters. And that's how, you know, that spreadsheet that everybody pulls up where it ranks all the pollsters and it shows their average error. Their average error is basically calculated by looking at their average from the month and then applying it to the popular vote, not their final poll. Because everybody, oh, Rasmussen's final poll was D+1. Bob Iger for 2. You mad because people now see Trump for the fraud he is? What are you talking about? He's literally polling better than what he was in 2020. I mean, Harris has picked up people, a lot of undecideds, but I mean, what the, bro, what in the world? So the last thing on the show today that we have is my new model, my new national average, which, I mean, I have been kind of promoting for the past couple of days. So that is definitely something that is pretty interesting. And again, I've talked about it in this current episode. And right now, I mean, we finished the website. I think it's looking pretty nice. And I'm going to show it to you guys right now so you guys can go ahead and see it before we end off the show here. But right now, Donald Trump is the favorite to win the presidential election based off of me reweighing all of the polling data by party ID. Donald Trump right now is a 68% favorite to win the election based on his leads in the states. Harris at about 31%. Donald Trump's odds in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada are all above 60%. That's why they are in the lean column. All of the states that are in the likely column are 70 to 80% odds, and anything that's safe has more than an 80% chance of going to either candidate. And looking at North Carolina, 67% odds in North Carolina, Florida, 76% odds in Florida for Donald Trump to win them. And Donald Trump is winning the state by a little bit over 10. It looks like an 11-point win there. Texas right now, I think it's like on the brink of 15 points based on what I have. Colorado's like a 9.5-point win. Illinois, it's like around a little bit over 10. New Jersey is like a 7 or 8-point win. New York is actually in this, like a little bit in the safe column. It's like barely safe or like barely under safe. I can't really tell when I do the math in my head. Trump in Pennsylvania is up by 4 and change. Michigan, 3.5. Wisconsin, he's up by over 5. And he's up in all the Sunbelt states by over 5 points. And looking at California, he's up there by a little bit over 20. So again, Donald Trump is the favorite. And right now, with the states that are up for grabs, New Mexico is a point and change for Harris. Minnesota is about 2 points, 3 points for Harris. So that's actually her best deep blue state. Maine is toss up. It's a little bit under 60% odds for Harris. It's almost a 4-point win. So slightly bluer than Minnesota. And Michigan right now is a Trump +3 state. Looking at Virginia, we look at that. That's like a 2.5-point victory. In New Hampshire, it's like a 1 point something percentage point win. And Nebraska second. Harris is like nearly leading it. It's the closest state on the map right now. And looking at the national average, today we dropped a new Economist poll into the average, and I believe a NPR/Marist poll was dropped out of the average because it's over a month old. And when you reweigh all of the party ID data, Donald Trump is leading. And this kind of aligns with the polling error that RCPs has had in the past. Like, I mean, in 2016, they overestimated Clinton by 1.1. Then they overestimated Biden by 3. And a lot of the polling data has gone bluer in their samples, especially with Harris now. And so you may see Donald Trump really win the popular vote by about 2 to 3 points. And right now I have Trump up by 3.2%. And it's not putting Harris in the best spot. I mean, she's hovering right around her job approval rating on RCP. And the job approval rating always tends to be a lot more accurate. I mean, that's always where it is. It's a lot more accurate than even any poll. Usually, the job approval tends to predict the national popular vote share of either candidate pretty well. And Donald Trump, once RFK kind of dropped out, you clearly see I've left him in the average because I want to see where his support goes over time. And as Kennedy's fallen, Donald Trump has gone up in support. Harris has gone up a tiny bit. And you can see here, Harris gained about a point in the average here. This is because I implemented something here, and I posted this on X. I implemented something in the grading system. This is how I grade the polls. Basically, you get certain points based on certain things. So margin of error from 2020, the more inaccurate you were, the less of a grade you get. So the more accurate you were, the more points you get in the average. Then I grade on the sample size. So depending on how many polls there are in the average for a current pollster, they get more of a weight in the electorate, because let's say that a pollster, doesn't poll for like a month, right? Let's say like their polls keep falling out of the average. It wouldn't make sense for their weight to stay the same, because since they have less samples put into the average, they're less representative of the electorate. And so it only makes sense to also grade pollsters on how many average polls they have in the month average. So I also include that. I also grade on sample size as well. So that they kind of work together. And then after that, I grade based on the likely or registered voter screen. So if you are a likely voter screen, you get more points. If you're registered voters, you kind of get less points. And this is where I implemented the grading on undecided. So the more undecideds you have, the less of a grade you get. So if you have a poll that has Trump at 40 and Harris at 40, you're going to have 20% undecideds. Like, that's a lot of people. That's literally like the undecideds could all break either way, and the race could go either way. So it only makes sense for pollsters that have more undecideds to get less of a grade, because they may be less representative, and I want to keep the undecideds as low as possible in the average. So when I predict my final popular vote margin on election day, when I'm kind of doing my final election predictions for everything, I want to have as least possible room for error as much as possible. And so when you see this date here between August 25th and the 26th, you see Harris does gain a point, but the undecideds go down by about a point, and that's what happened. Harris just picked up all the undecideds when I weighed for polls that have less undecided. So for those of you claiming that I'm trying to be biased when I make this average, I'm not. I'm trying to be as accurate as possible by reweighing all the polling ID or the party ID to get a more accurate representation. And just for the sake of this, the national average, I'm weighing it to a tied electorate. Republican registration nationwide in every single state except Colorado has been absolutely good, to the point where I kind of have to move the electorate like a point to the right. I mean, I have to. The electorate in 2020 was D+1. And it was funny. When I actually did this for 2020, I actually went back, used the same pollsters, plugged in all the data, and what I did is I weighed the 2020 electorate to the 2016 electorate, and when I did that, my final average was Biden at like 49.5%, and Trump was like at 44 point something. Like, it was literally like Biden plus 5.2, which was Biden's final average with Rasmussen reports, by the way. So my average, doing the same thing I'm doing now with Biden, would have produced a more accurate average than RCP and 538 did. The same exact thing I'm doing. And all I did is I reweighed all the data to 2016, and Donald Trump was down in the popular vote 5.2%, and that would have helped me predict the Electoral College almost spot on. And looking down here, we tested the model to 2020, And the way it works is we have my polling average / personal estimation, my demographic margins, which is the 538 thing I showed you. I plugged in Barris's numbers. I plugged those in. And then what I do is I find the nonpartisan leaning of every single state. So essentially what it is you get a state, you find how it votes relative to the nation. So, for example, Georgia was tilt blue in 2020, but the popular vote was Biden plus 4.5. It was a margin of plus 0.2. So when you subtract the popular vote minus the margin, you get the relative vote to the nation. So Georgia voted to the right of the nation by 4.2%. So when you find that for every state and you track the trend between 2000 and 2020 and you add the trend from each cycle to the 2020 numbers, you find an estimate relative to the nation vote for every state. And then I add my estimated popular vote to that, and that gets averaged in with the other two results. And when we tested the model to 2020, I mean, you literally get something that's pretty much accurate. Now, what I preface this is the 538 model, the default settings are the correct 2020 demographics. And so clearly, if I plugged in the correct demographics, it would have been right. So assuming that I would have gotten the demographics correct and plugged in my own personal projections from 2020, which was Biden 278 to Trump 260. And I still remember all of the categorizations I had for that election. And looking at my nonpartisan plus popular vote margin, I plugged in my Biden of plus 5.2 into all of the partisan leaning. And you get something that's pretty accurate. And I even put something here. If I would have basically overestimated Trump in the demographic model by 5 points in every state, it would have been Trump 289 to 249. If I would have overestimated Biden, which would have been more likely given the polling data we had, I would have had Biden with 321 to 217, and North Carolina would have been tilt blue. So I still would have been within reason, way better than 538. Or RCP or Nate Silver for that matter. And so this is what you get. And it's pretty close. Like Minnesota plus 6.2 for Biden. It was Biden plus 7.1. New Hampshire was 6.5. Biden plus 7.4. Maine was actually a little bit bluer in the final result. It was like 10.1. And he ended up winning it by 9.1. Nebraska D plus 5. It was 6.6. Pennsylvania 0.8, it was plus 1.2. Wisconsin 0.5 was literally plus 0.6. Georgia plus 0.26. It was like almost on the money. It was like literally 200s off. Arizona plus 0.5, it was 0.3. Nevada plus 2.1, it was 2.4. Now again, in 2016, I did the map for 2016, and it doesn't get it 100% correct. Only reason being that Nebraska second goes blue. But I get every other state right, even Nevada. So when you plug it in, and 2016 is a little bit iffy because I only have the nonpartisan and the demographic model to go off of because I didn't have any personal projections or polling data. So even if I used the RCP aggregates for some of the states, I probably still would have gotten pretty close. Either way, I still probably would have gotten close because I think I had Trump was a little overestimated in the Rust Belt states. But even if I used the RCP aggregates, I could have probably even been more correct because Georgia was actually lean R in my 2016 map. So if I had plugged in the RCP average, I probably actually could have gotten Georgia's margin closer. And same thing for Arizona. Arizona is like a little bit to the left of what it was, and Nevada was a little bit close. So overall, this model, when used correctly and honestly, does prove to be accurate. And there is some human intervention. I am fiddling around with the model, but I feel like that's important because if you're strictly relying on some mathematical equation, you're kind of leaving out the critical thinking process of a person knowing what the electorate's going to look like, who's going to turn out, where states are moving. Like you're kind of missing that. And with these new adjusted averages, you get something that's a lot better. I actually did the adjusted average for Wisconsin in 2020, and my adjusted average is Biden plus 2.1. That's not that off from the final margin. The final margin was Biden plus 0.6. That's like 1.5 points off. That's literally better than any aggregate you would find out there. And I weighed for an R+5 electorate. I literally weighed for the same electorate as 2020, and we basically would have had the same exact, not the same exact result, but only 1.5 points off. And so that is pretty much it for today's. That's it for today's show, guys. We covered, Alan Lichtman's model. We covered Rich Barris's new poll. We covered the CNN battlegrounds. We also covered my model and my national average as well. You can go to onpointpolitics.com to go and check that out. Next episode, I'm going to try to have some voters on the panel and see where they think. A few things to keep note of. There was a town hall with Donald Trump today and Sean Hannity, so make sure to go check that out. Hold on. There is going to be a debate next week on September 10th between Donald Trump and Harris. It just came in that Harris did actually agree to the rules, and now she's complaining that the rules are going to put her at a disadvantage, even though they're the same ones Biden had, but whatever. So either way, that's where we're at right now in terms of the race. My prediction for the debate is that Harris is going to tank in that debate because Donald Trump has a response for everything. And just to even give you an example, like, how's Harris going to answer this? Like, Biden dropped out of the race because he couldn't win, and he couldn't even win because people saw that he was mentally incompetent. And so it's like, Donald Trump could just be like, well, why did you lie to the American people that Biden was mentally sharp? And she'll be like, no, he is. And he's like, oh, really? Well, why isn't he debating me right now? Like, it's like not, it's just not working out. This is what happens when you lie for 4 years. You get stuck. Like, that's going to be the thing in the debate. That's going to be one of the talking points that hurts her the most. Like, all-star politics or just avoid the question. Well, Donald Trump is probably going to bring it up, and more than likely the media will probably bring it up too. I mean, for crying out loud, the guy dropped out and there's a new candidate. This is the whole reason why we're having another debate, because there's a new candidate. So the likeliness of them not even asking the question doesn't really make sense. And either way, Donald Trump's going to bring it up. All-star politics. I mean, you could say keep avoiding then. I mean, you could say that, but more than likely it's going to be brought up. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring it up. If I was a moderator, I would bring it up because it's like, what are we doing here? Like what? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like, what are we doing here? They're probably going to bring up the economy. They're probably going to bring up immigration like they did in the last debate. They're going to bring up the convictions for Trump and the sentencing. They're going to bring up Harris's previous positions. Like, it's just like, and on all these things, it's not going to look good. Even if she tries to do the, oh, Donald, I'm speaking, it's not going to work out because her favorabilities are way lower than what they were in 2020. Mike Pence was not Donald Trump. Mike Pence was this old white guy that fit this stereotypical part that even some independents were like kind of iffy about. So when she did that in 2020, at the pandemic, they were leading the average by like 8-9 points. So it's like it kind of worked and it turned into like a girl boss moment. But if she does that now, it's just not going to be effective. Her approval rating is way lower than what it was in 2020. The issues that are about, I mean, she has a record. So for her to do that, it's not going to be politically convenient. I mean, there's a reason why she wants notes. There's a reason why she wants to do a sit-down debate. There's a reason why she doesn't want muted mics. It's because she knows she's screwed at the debate. She's going to have to figure out some sort of cop-out. I mean, I'm just being honest and just thinking about it. Like, there's so many things Donald Trump could just crush her on. That being the Biden the mental capacity question. Like, it's, what is she going to say? Oh yeah, no, he's still sharp. He just dropped out for the good of the country. Really? It's like, it's not going to work out. Like, a lot of those are not, those type of situations are not going to work out for Harris. The economy is not going to look good for Harris because she's tied to the administration. She's even more responsible for the border than even Joe Biden is. So it's like Donald Trump can point that out. And the problem with Harris is that in a natural, authentic setting where she's not scripted, that's where she falters the most, even more than Biden. Like, Biden could at least go off script here and there. Harris literally cannot. She can't do it. So at the debate, I don't know what they're going to do, but I'm going to tell you right now, if I had to bet on who was going to win the debate, I'd probably bet Donald Trump. Now, don't go bet on the debate because of me, but I'm just telling you, if I was a betting man, I would bet on Donald Trump to win the race. And funny enough, he on betonline.com, which is our new sponsor up until the election, they actually have odds where you can bet on who's going to win the debate. And Donald Trump is the underdog in the debate. So again, we'll see where that goes. But either way, guys, it's over. This episode is done. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content like this. We did have about 2,000 viewers on this, so that was absolutely amazing. The likes, let's get them up higher next time. Only 143 likes. It would be nice if we did it. And I will see you guys in the next live stream and next video. I will be posting tomorrow as always, so I will see you guys very, very soon.